Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of the Guest List podcast. I'm your host, Steve Guest. For those of you that haven't listened to this podcast before, the podcast was born out of my first book, Top Biller, The Life of a Recruiter. And I was getting bombarded with questions and scenarios and situations. And I thought, what better way than getting other individuals with fantastic stories and interesting backgrounds to chat with and then add more value and content out to you, our listeners. So today's guest is no exception to that, and I'm really excited and looking forward to having a more detailed chat with them. Before we get the introductions there, I'm just going to run through the bio and see if any of you can guess who we're talking to. So today's guest is the host of the Purpose-Led Leadership podcast, which is available on Spotify and iTunes, ex-global top biller at SThree, and 25 million pound recruitment business owner that has now turned into a non-exec director for a number of businesses. Almost all business problems are people problems because people without purpose have no centralised reason driving them to perform. Today's guest, after exiting their last business, now coaches leaders on how to build purpose-led businesses that perform, working on best process, vision, execution, and harmonising your life with your work. Working with leaders in service-based businesses across staffing solutions, BD and account growth, talent management, retention development, organisational development, get fit for sale, developing robust value propositions and marketing strategies. An outspoken advocate of mental health, mindset and self-care, a proud dad to 3 incredible boys, and an amazing person. I've followed and networked with this person for a good amount of time now. So a big warm welcome to Chris O Connell.
Steve, thank you very much. That's quite an introduction. I almost believe it myself now you've said it.
I always read through these bios and I always get a bit tongue twisted, you know, where you're just kind of working through things.
Yeah, I need to shorten that a little bit probably.
Yeah, no, it's good. I'm really excited to have a chat with you. As I say, we've talked on and off, haven't we, for probably a good couple of years now, I would think. How's life treating you?
Really good. Yeah, and thank you. I'm honoured to be invited on. I've seen some of the other podcasts, and well done on your book, by the way. So yeah, I'm good. I'm really enjoying 2022. So 6 or 7 days in, but yeah, I'm excited about the future at the moment.
It's been a roller coaster, hasn't it? I say this week for me has just been crazy busy. Obviously, you always come back motivated and geared, don't you, to achieve all your goals and targets and things. What does 2022 look like for you? What's happening?
Well, I think it will still and always has start with self-care. So looking after myself so I can serve others. So my NED portfolio is growing. I've got a good platform there. So to expand that out a little bit, I think, looking at different revenue streams for my business, building out a coaching business, doing a subscription model as well. But I just love giving back to the sector as well. So, you know, my personal brand, working with clout, you know, elevating that as much as I can and just collaborating with as many people, keeping myself in check. But it's not just about business for me, as you probably know. It's about that personal growth as well, and you know, spending my time more wisely, and just measuring a bit more the stuff that I'm doing inside of work and outside of work. So I'm going to be a stickler for kind of like incremental gains and, you know, sort of improving daily habits, basically.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer of that. I talk about that a lot during the podcast, that kind of compound effect, that 1% little
I'm reading that book as we speak, actually.
It's a great book. It was a game changer for me a few years ago. When I had lots of staff back in the day, I used to buy that book for every consultant that joined, because I think it's important to have that concept of thought that actually it's not about huge, massive changes on a big grand scale. It's about making that one extra sales call, maybe coming in 10 minutes early to beat the competition. It can be as small as that add up over a period of time, isn't it?
100%. And there's so many different examples within the business sense as well, but also as a different type of example. So I live on a 4th floor apartment, and it's this lovely view. So instead of getting the lift over the last 2 weeks, I've got the stairs. And it's a different example. and my leg muscles are just like amazing now.
Yeah,
And it's things like that, which is giving me more energy, which is giving me more confidence, which is giving me more positivity in business. It's amazing. There's different things that link to the compound effect. But yeah, I think in business and out of business, if you make those little changes, eventually it's like, wow.
It is, and funny you should mention that as an example. I think, I don't know whether I put it down to the compound effect and reading that book, but I never take the lift. If the stairs and the lift are next to each other, they generally are. Even if I'm like on the bottom floor of a car park and I've got to get to the 6th or 7th and there's 14 flights, I still take the stairs.
Amazing. And if you do that in 4, 5, 6, 7 different areas of life, it becomes normal. And yeah, so you're right. I think these big fat hairy goals, they call them, I think you've got to have the end goals and the big vision. But like, I think what I'm enjoying this so far this year is just a weekly. I'll send myself a weekly report.
Okay.
And it's actually really good. I'm writing down what I'm eating and what I'm spending, and people might think that's a bit draconian, but actually what's not measured isn't managed, and I'm a firm believer in that now.
Loving that. I'm loving that. And I say I'm a firm advocate. I've goals, plans are all on a spreadsheet. I do it every year between Christmas and New Year. I structure it down in terms of what I want to achieve across various areas within my life: family, leisure, fun, work, business, finance, whatever it might be. But then it's broken down into a smaller scale that's manageable and not overwhelming. And I think half the problem these days is we all have these big ideas and big plans, and perhaps governed by what you see on social media as per the perfect lifestyle.
Yeah.
And people try and get to that too fast, and they either stop because it's never achievable, or they don't have a plan or process in place to measure to get to that stage.
I think as well, psychologically, if you know and you can visually see it, that you've nudged the dial, even if it's a tiny little thing every day or every week, you're more likely and more motivated to carry on doing that. It's when if you don't know what a good day, week, or month looks like, you're gonna lose focus anyway.
Yeah. And so, at the end of the month, how have you ended up where you are? If you haven't looked at it or measured it or understood it or reviewed it, you're sailing by the wind, aren't you? So, I mean, you as an individual, you've been through one hell of a journey, haven't you? I know that from previous discussions. Give me a bit of an insight into the Chris O Connell of old, how you've got through to where you are now, and perhaps some of the changes and things that have happened to you that have had a real impact.
Well, yeah, I'm going to go back right to the age of 2 and give you a whistle-stop tour in hopefully under 10 minutes to explain some of the context as to I think some of the reasons why I've had a bit of a roller coaster career. That's okay without boring you too much. So I was actually born in a caravan. My dad came home. I was 2, my brother was 3. I was hanging out the caravan window naked. My brother had raided the fridge. My mum basically abandoned us, left us there all night, and fucked off basically. I can swear, too late now. My dad wasn't emotionally intelligent or capable, able to look after us. So I was fostered for 4 years between the age of 3 and 7. My dad took us back. He worked on the railways. We never had any money. I got kind of bullied at school for being called a pikey, not having any, the right clothes, all that kind of stuff. Then he remarried, and she kind of abused me as well. So the first 2 female figures in my life weren't exactly good role models. That affected me psychologically, as it would anyone. Being abandoned, by your own mother, for God's sake, and then your stepmother is abusive. So that affected my mental health. I got through that, got through school, didn't enjoy school, felt very different, inferior, very vulnerable and very shy, and just, I felt a bit of a misfit. Then joined a business called Computer Futures SThree. I'm sure most of us know who they are, one of the biggest and best renowned recruitment businesses in Europe, if not the world. At that time, they were even bigger than they are now. I think they had 14 countries and 600 or 700 consultants. I started off as a resourcer, very quickly became a consultant, got to 30 contractors, running the fastest person ever, became the worldwide top biller across every single brand in that group, billing 700, 800 grand a year, placing project program managers, change managers, knocked the doors off, became a manager, director, team leader, managing about 400 contractors, fell into recruitment. And in terms of it was almost like a calling. I just became very good at it. Left there, set up my own business in 2003, got that to 100 people, 14 industry awards, so three Virgin Fast Track 100 awards in a row, three-star best company awards in a row, 25 million pound turnover, a couple of million quid EBITDA, 3 offices. I was Southwest Entrepreneur of the Year. The business, where that business would be now, is mind-boggling. It simply was one of the best recruitment businesses out there. Then did a deal via private equity. I'll talk to you about how I built that business, how we built the business later on. But I still feel we're very ahead of the time back then to kind of build it that quickly. With a great culture. But the private equity transaction that I did went wrong, and I by no means got the payout that I deserved. That business was worth anything north of 20 million, probably 30, 35 million on its day, and it was going north. But that went wrong, and that hit me really hard. So, as you might imagine, being a very exposed CEO, to then losing all of that and watching daytime TV every day, it really, really, really affected me. Lots of mental health stuff went on. I got divorced, lost access to my children, lost my house, became addicted to gambling, had some suicide attempts, which I've talked about, and lost my way quite badly. Then got divorced, as I said. Left that property with a couple of bin bags of stuff and just found a 2-bed flat and just escaped that. And that was a real turning point for me, because that time on my own was a period of reflection. And I looked back and thought, wow, what an achievement. It's the first time I started to think, actually, I'd done something really good. Up until that point, even all those achievements, I never felt it was a good thing. It was this imposter syndrome or lack of self-worth. So over the last two, 3 years, I've come back onto LinkedIn, as people know, and Andrew Silito, you probably know him. He invited me on one of his webinar things as a guest speaker, and I talked about vulnerability and leadership, and I used that as my framework, as my story to come back into the sector. And over the last 2 years, I've now used my story to build a following and a brand and a business. I built a business now. I'm a serial NED, well referenced, well recommended, and I go into recruitment businesses now and advise them how to grow. And I love it, and I've got some great clients. I'm a mental health first aider. I do loads of stuff for mental health as well. Podcast host, and I think I do feel as if I've reinvented myself. I'm happier now with the purpose and the fulfillment and the direction and the substance I've got as a human being than I ever was as a CEO earning 600 grand a year, having 3 Range Rovers and 7 houses and whatever it was, so there we go. That was probably 12 minutes, but never mind.
I mean, that is an amazing story. Thank you for sharing it and being so honest as well, because that road has been a tough road. And now to be where you are, I mean, I watch you, I see your posts, we've talked and I followed you, and you are a genuinely inspiring person.
Thank you.
And you have so much value in content, and that's really from me being a third party looking in and not really having any direct day-to-day contact with you.
Yeah, thank you.
So, I mean, in terms of that growth and things and hitting things and having that spiral, do you feel that has all added to make you who you are now? Obviously, it's part of it. Have the lessons there developed you into a completely different person, or have you just added to who you were before?
I think if you want to call it a comeback, the comeback has been worth the suffering, because the suffering has meaning. So 100%. I know a lot of people say it's made me what I am today, but I'm a living, breathing example of that, and I almost feel like it was kind of written for me to go through that, because I just appreciate life and see things so much differently than what I did, in terms of having the ability to walk into any environment, any shop, and buy what I want. I was buying 35, 40 grand watches at will, whatever it was, and but I was not on the planet. I was reckless, I was wild, but I think you have to, in that position, I feel as if you almost, certainly back then, I had to almost put on a certain persona. You have to be this kind of gregarious individual. But I see it as a gift. At the time, it was the worst. I felt it was the worst thing that could ever happen to me. I don't think I could ever recover from it. But actually, it happened to a reason. If it didn't happen to me now, I don't know where I'd be. You know, I might well be an alcoholic. I might be homeless. I might be in prison. I don't know. I just think that if I knew then what I knew now, everyone says it. I mean, I just feel I'm a much better leader now than I ever was back then. But I must have done something right, because, you know, the figures don't lie, and you know, the people that have worked for me in the past, you know, if you ask any of my well, pretty much most of my ex colleagues, they will back up what I say, that Timothy James was an amazing business, and you know, talk about legacy and purpose. Where do you go from there? So that's a great achievement itself. But I think the bigger achievement now is doing what I'm doing, what you touched on, this whole kind of like being open and vulnerable and giving something back to someone. I think that's more of an achievement personally than building a massive business, but both are good.
We're talking about the vulnerability side and the openness. I think I've been in recruitment 16 years or so. And I think the environment has changed. And I think the pandemic and COVID has given it perhaps a softer element to it. But you and I both know recruitment is an unforgiving industry at the best of times. And in many ways, it's quite archaic in how people are treated. There's some very old school methods and ways within recruitment businesses where it's so hardened in terms of the sales element, the activity, the KPIs, the pressures. And quite often it's seen as a weakness if you say, I'm lacking motivation, or I don't feel like I can do this today. What would you say to perhaps people that are listening to this, knowing that perhaps they're struggling a bit? It is a tough environment. The market has changed. The landscape and environment of recruitment has become perhaps a little bit more difficult. But they don't know where to go. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to get over those sort of hurdles. What sort of things would you suggest?
Well, I think it starts with awareness and accountability. And I feel that when you start to be honest with yourself, then better things happen. So when you say it's become more difficult, I think it has and it hasn't. If anything, I feel that it's become more human. Actually, I feel that kind of. If you ask me what I look for in a good recruiter, yes, it's process, yes, it's belief and hunger and all that kind of stuff, but actually it's emotional intelligence. And sometimes what I would say to that is, why don't you harness this anxiety or this vulnerability and use it as your superpower? And instead of being a corporate kind of like business-led kind of like consultant, I think the way you can win more business and develop yourself is actually, yes, you have to have a framework when you're going about your day-to-day recruitment, but people are buying from people, and it's a well-common statement, but actually you've seen the advent of personal brand, the explosion of it. You know, I look on LinkedIn now, and every other post is a selfie. I mean, it's gone the other way. So I wouldn't shy away from that, those emotions. I'd lean into them and go, actually, what they're here for a reason. Why don't I start being a bit more open about them, talking to my boss, my managers, my colleagues, my clients about these kind of things, and start to win hearts and minds that way.
Yeah, I think it's definitely changing towards that. I think, I think back to my time in the early days of recruitment, you'd never go to your boss and say, I don't feel motivated today. I'm not going to make the calls. I'm just not up for it. You'd be shown the door, and totally. You'd be gone. And I think it's now more about the empowerment of individuals. It's about how people are led and the mentorship and the leadership of people. In terms of perhaps your path, what have you found inspiring perhaps from other people? Are there people around you that you just look at and you think you want to emulate them, or you want to surround yourself with those individuals? Perhaps who've had that sort of impact with you?
Yeah, I think if you asked me this question, years ago, I wasn't one for. I just thought I had this thing where I just thought I was the best, which you kind of need to have. But it was also my downfall around it. I didn't necessarily have a coach or a mentor myself. I didn't collaborate with my competitors. So I think the people on LinkedIn and the people in my sphere who don't see competitors as competitors, they see them as collaborators. I think that's really good.
Yeah.
I think it is about being true to yourself, but just making sure that you are you're not being something that you're not. I mean, in a simple form, the people that are doing well, the ones are actually human beings. Whether you're a CEO or a cleaner or whatever you are, we're all human beings at the end of the day. So it's those types of people that the real authentic people that you know, they recognize their weaknesses, and they hire people in that can deliver the stuff that they're not very good at themselves as well. I think that's really, really important. I mean, Amelia Sordell's a good example. She's only 31. She does all my marketing. She's a great inspirational type person. She's good. Andy McCaskill's done loads. Yourself. I think you can learn a lot from other people as well. And I think that's there's a lot of people out there. And your business doesn't have to be a big business either. I think I've got James Reed on my podcast coming up in a couple of weeks, and that's going to be an interesting topic. But then I've got some brands in my own portfolio, 1-person bands and 10-person bands that I think you're such an inspirational leader because you're true to your values. There's a guy called John Blackburn who's one of my clients. He runs a business called We Are Vocaccia. He's only got 5 or 6 people. His values, he's so tied to his values, and he's it doesn't have to be the biggest and best person out there. It's the people that I feel that are authentic to themselves and are actually living with purpose. They're the sort of people I admire.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I've tried to get better. I think I've been on my own sort of journey from about 2012. I read a lot. I surround myself with people that I think they're just genuine. And they have influence, but at the same time they lead ethical, honest, hardworking lives. And as you say, they're authentic in their approach. And I think the more people can be more about the journey and taking people with them as much as they follow and surround themselves with them, actually it becomes a really enjoyable process. It's
Absolutely.
not about beating that person next to you or comparing where you are with someone else.
No, unfortunately, there are. I mean, I've removed myself from some of my ex-colleagues, some of my ex-friends around the people that they deem tearing other people down as making them shine brighter, but it's completely the opposite. I mean, that's such a draconian way of going about your life, isn't it? And there's the way I've built I've gained 10,000 followers in the last year by literally. People I thought were kind of my competitors, instead of like shying away from them or getting negative about them, and just reaching out to them and saying, "Mate, I love what you're doing. Let's have a chinwag." And then a bit like you, mate. And that's what you got to do. Just like there's enough abundance for everybody, isn't there?
It's not rocket science either, is it? We're all on the path. Yeah. Okay, we might have a similar market, or we might share a little bit of market space.
Yeah.
Nobody owns it. So why not just go in the same direction?
Yeah, exactly. The problem is, I think some people do feel that they have a monopoly on everything. It's like, no, mate, you need to wake up and smell the coffee. But
again, I think that comes back to the old elements of recruitment. I was trained and taught to ring fence everything I did, whether that be candidates, CVs, clients. No, you can't touch that. If you come over here, you've got to split the fee. You've got to do this, that, and the other. Don't get talking to my clients. And you kind of born out of, this is all mine, you're not coming in.
Yeah.
Because of that thought process, I think you're shielded until you get out of that and just start thinking, do you know what, actually, if we work together, we'll get there faster. We can move to the next thing a little bit faster. We become bigger, better, more efficient.
All the top people, it's about give. A lot of people in my circle say this, that all the top people, they give away a lot of their IP and their wisdom for free, but they're paying it forward because it's reposited back to them in different ways, and that's how you look at it.
Yeah, I've certainly learned that, I think, over the last few years, and I think it's an element of keep going out there and giving as much value as possible, because everything else around you then grows.
Absolutely.
People don't necessarily get that until they start doing it.
It's just like giving something away isn't losing something. It's you can only gain from that. And I do believe in that kind of universe thing as well. It's like if you do get what you give out. So
yeah, exactly. Okay, I mean, we've covered quite a lot in the journey in terms of perhaps growing your following, building that personal brand. What do you feel, other than perhaps having that authenticity? What is it that's perhaps getting you along in terms of building that personal brand? What sorts of things are you sharing? What are you talking about?
Well, I think I've got 3 pillars to my content. Leadership, because I'm a leader. I've been a leader, and I advise leaders. And that's what the space I'm in. Mental health, mm-hmm. and recruitment. So they're my 3 areas of expertise, and I kind of swap and change those around, and in different formats. So sometimes it might be a video, it might be a poll. I don't do polls anymore, actually. It might be text. Yeah. But I think showing myself up in terms of putting myself out there, talking about my journey, my story, but having the courage of my convictions around actually. When I think about what I do, I've built a really big business, and I've sold that. Now I'm an NED to 10, 12, 15 businesses. That's quite a high profile, high level role. And I think back and think, bloody hell, that's really good.
Yeah.
So I think it's about, what I'm trying to say is, I think it's about embracing who I am and being confident. A bit like, when you try to teach a consultant to take control of the client and tell them you're the expert and you book in the CVs, not them. It's a bit like, well, actually. So what I'm trying to say is, I think it's just having that confidence I'm advising you, and what I'm saying is right, and not watering your advice down. And I think that's a good thing. And I think you grow in confidence. So I pivoted, and the more successful calls you make, the more successful gigs you do, the more confident, the more slick, more efficient you get, the more podcasts you host. So I think it's I've learned along the way, and I've pivoted along the way. But I think it's having an understanding of what your fortes are. So leadership, recruitment, and mental health, and going heavy on those, mm-hmm. and not deviating. Not staying in your lane. So don't want to be talking about interior design or construction if you're not in that space.
Okay, so in terms of the leadership elements, a good part of this podcast is we have people that are listening that are either looking for that inspiration, looking for that motivation, things that get them over those hurdles to achieve more and create greater success. What would you say are perhaps some of the traits that these individuals should be either working towards getting to, or need to possess to perhaps have that empowerment towards their staff? What should they be looking for as a leader?
Well, I think I'll go back to vulnerability and leadership. I think it's about, no matter how big your business is, the power of a one-to-one meeting as opposed to this carte blanche kind of leadership style. So you need to understand what leadership hat to wear, to whom, and to when. Mm-hmm. So I've always gone on the premise of managing the individual, not team, because everybody's different, right? To a certain extent. Some people like presentations, for example. Some people like KPIs. Some people like a firm management style. Some people like a cuddle or nurturing. So the key thing is that, like, I go back to what I said at the start, EQ, so understanding that emotional intelligence. So I feel that as leaders, you need to understand what your strengths are, understand what your weaknesses are, be open about that, get the right people around you, and communicate, talk. You don't have to put on a persona because you're a leader. You don't have to be a certain type of individual. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a real art. I think where leaders go wrong is they get a bit too stoic and a bit too kind of, they have to behave a certain way, and I disagree with that. I think I would encourage my people to feel comfortable asking me questions and challenging me as well. And it's a real art, because if you do it too much the wrong way, you can be deemed as a soft touch. And I feel that it's down to awareness and emotional intelligence mainly.
It's so true, isn't it? I had to learn that. I went from being a senior consultant at a big corporate entity to opening a new office for a business and growing it to 19 staff. I had 2 regional offices, and the ability to transition from being a top performing consultant and managing clients and candidates to then having a team of people, from resources, admin, trainee consultants to experienced consultants, some more years than me, to understanding that we all react in a different way to certain things. and we all expect certain things or don't expect certain things, and finding that balance between how to deal with that is definitely a journey. It certainly wasn't without mistakes. I'll hold my hands up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sometimes you get it wrong. Sometimes you need to perhaps be a bit more strategic or think about how you're going to deal with things. But I've always been me, and I'm always open to say, do you know what, I've actually made a mistake there, or I've got that wrong.
No, totally. Because what that does, it enables the other person to be like that as well, and they're more likely to say, hold their hands up and go, Steve, I don't know how to do this, or I fucked up here, and that's what you want. You don't want to hear all the good stuff. You want to hear where the pain points are, don't you?
Yeah, completely. And I think I've been around people, and I've probably been managed by people that feel they have to be a certain way or act in a certain way because they've got that promotion, or they're now leading a team. So I've got to be this authoritarian, you will do this now because I'm your boss.
Yeah.
I think as times are shifting, certainly in recruitment, we've got to be more open with how things are managed, how people are motivated, how we understand how people work. Even more so now that you've got the ability to work from home, perhaps a little bit more, where the management and leadership styles have differed again. And I think there's huge education required for things like that, certainly in recruitment.
Yeah, absolutely.
The potential there is huge. Okay, so if there are listeners online that are wanting to speak to you about a variety of things, whether that be leadership, mental health, getting you involved as an NED, where's the best place to find you? Where do you spend a lot of your time?
Well, LinkedIn is my main platform. I'm building up my Instagram. I'm on Facebook as well. I'm about to do a YouTube channel, but LinkedIn is 100% the best place. And all my contact details are on there.
Yeah, and they can get you via your podcast as well.
Podcast as well, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic. And
I have to get you on my podcast as well.
I would love that. Yes, definitely take you up on that opportunity. And in terms of, if there was one single piece of advice you would offer any of our listeners today, what would that be?
I think in 3 words: impress, not improve. Sorry, improve, not impress. The other way around. So I think a lot of the times, and I've been guilty of this. We post stuff, or we do stuff, we make decisions based on trying to impress somebody else. Or actually, we should be making those judgments, those decisions, those choices to improve ourselves and impress ourselves. So that's the biggest thing I'm learning around. Before I make a decision, I say to myself, this is going to improve me and the people that's affected, or am I just trying to impress me or somebody else? And I think that's what I'd like to say.
That's a great outlook, and I think we've touched on it in this podcast already. I think the powers of social media, the powers to put photos, statements, videos online that make us look amazing or make our lives look amazing. We don't necessarily always understand the implication that has for someone else who's looking at it thinking, oh my God, look at that person surrounded by cash, sat in a bath. That's what I want. I want that fast sports car or that private jet on my drive.
Yeah.
None of it's genuinely real, is it? Most of it's hired or bought in, and we all sat there thinking, my life should be so much better. And I love that. I think improve, don't impress, or improve,
not impress, basically.
Improve, not impress. That could be the title of this podcast episode.
There we go.
Chris, a massive thank you. I appreciate you spending your time with us today.
I enjoyed it. Thanks so much. I'll get you onto mine as well. Cheers, Steve.
I will put all of the relevant links if you want to get in touch with Chris at the bottom of the episode. Any questions, come back to us. Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Likewise. Cheers, Steve.